Okay, so Truth Seekers, this video covers a particular art style. I'm on a blog called clondrive.blogspot.com. I pinned this article to the comment. When I was younger, I'd come across this art style where the faces were not well depicted, distinguishing features removed, as well as those lines that will provide depth to an image. This year, I find an article that discusses what it may represent. It's a type of abstract art. An early example that influenced me was this poster for the European Union. You may have come across this 2006, 2007. You see these faces, which are in three-dimensional blocks with features distorted, making them appear as Lego characters. Europe, many tongues, one voice. You see a Tower of Babel-like structure in this poster with stars wreathed around, all upside down. When I saw this poster, I realized it was symbolic of a world system that is specifically trying to rebel against God. And at that time, this spoke to me as a homogeneity to symbolically express the collectivist hope. The masses will lose their individuality and all operate as an ant colony in complete obedience to a central authority. So we'll start reading the article. Here are some dictionary definitions for the word flat. Lacking in animation, zest, or vigor. Lacking emotion, dull and lifeless. Not interesting or without excitement. A new style of illustrating has emerged over the last few years, one that is fitting for our time and represents the soul of the people who create it, use it, and genuinely like it. It's generally known as people of flat design due to it having a level surface with no curved, high, or hollow parts, at least according to the most common descriptive definition. However, as we shall see, it's not just flat in appearance alone. It's become hard to avoid. It's become the go-to design for the soulless modern company for reasons we'll get into. Before commenting on why it's used, the first thing to mention is this. It is profoundly ugly. The image that's a choice for my thumbnail of the video is a mockery of the concept with Joe Biden sniffing someone's hair. I believe this image is the inspiration for that. Can you imagine? It's 2022. This individual is our president. Continuing, I have a visceral reaction to it and have done so from when it first crept in. In my later childhood, I remember being able to differentiate between what was aimed at adults and what was aimed at kids. In general, anything that was animated or illustrated, the brighter the colors, even more so, to look to be aimed at children. I understood animation and cartoonish illustrations were for children and realism was for adults. This is one of the things that's immediately apparent upon the design. It's infantilizing. The fact that it is targeted at adults makes this even worse. As I started seeing it more and more, I intrinsically began to understand why. Knowing which way the wind was blowing, the rationale behind it became clear to me. It's apparent that in the sterile boardrooms of every advertising company, the primary modus operandi is to make white people, particularly men, appear obsolete. I feel this topic gets repetitive, yet we're forced to deal with it because every now and then we get a window into the actual workings of how this is enforced. This article, which links, recently confirmed that we all know to be true after a top female advertising executive announced at a conference. One thing we all agree on is that the reputation we once earned as being full of white British privileged men has to be obliterated. She wrote in an article, a hell of a lot of people are literally sleeping on the job when it comes to diversifying their creative department beyond white pale stale males. We can infer from this that every boardroom is filled with people who have the same goal in mind for whatever company they're working for. What we're seeing with flat design is corporatism, at the same time catering to and being informed by anti-white ideology, or as they would put it, racial justice. Here's another example. It's a tweet from James Lindsay on January 11th. Basically shows a Starbucks graphic with the line, strengthening our culture of inclusion. Here you see a woman with a burqa, some colored people, each of these people wearing green Starbucks clothing, all drawn in a cartoony fashion with featureless faces, which in my opinion emphasizes the collective homogeneous concept of things. Diverse yet homogeneous with the narrative. The ant colony. Back to the article. The new people of flat design is a way to cater to a multiracial society without featuring or prioritizing one race over another. I've written before about how the establishment is working to convince people that Britain has always been home to all peoples of the world, that mass immigration is natural and good, and that there's no such thing as a native British person, that calling someone a Mong is rad, but the British are all Mong. That is just an accident that you were born here, and that the Britain is just an economic chessboard that the whole world can and should lay claim to. All malicious lies, of course. Showing a normative, healthy British person is now a rarity. Things are so bad that seeing a normal family in some kind of advert design is actually surprising. Seeing ourselves represented actually stands out and feels transgressive. Every time you see a non-British person used in this way, it is to be taken as a politicized attack against our identity. The people of the flat design is a way to manage the shock and resentment normal British people might and should feel when we see ourselves misrepresented on a mass scale for ideological reasons. If no one is represented, then we're all represented, is how they decided to conduct this. Let's see another example. I've come across this article from IN Design. What's interesting is that it reads like a kind of celebration parallax. The author is essentially agreeing with what I'm saying here, but she's framing it as a positive development. The style has the name Alegria, which is Spanish for joy. This is already right out of their playbook. How can something be tyrannical when it comes at you with a smile and a rainbow? Airbnb, Hinge, Lyft, Airtable, Google, and YouTube are all in on the craze, along with seemingly every other new app and startup in existence. For these companies, adopting a visual language that signals positivity and connectedness is a tool to paper over the social and political harm and divisiveness their products create. And illustration has increasingly become a centerpiece of the strategy. So these large platforms, this is YouTube on Twitter, this is an extreme demonstration of diversity. You have a heavyset person with boots on, purple hair, rainbow flags, blue people, tiger colored people. Is that animal kin? These businesses, they know they follow a narrative, but they use this imagery, gilding on a decrepit building, to try to suggest universal inclusivity when really it's about the tribe and do you believe the right way? Here's another example for YouTube. The Alegria style lends itself to standardization replication, which is exactly how the kind of person that the system selects for sees humanity, or so they might claim. In reality, it's only Europeans that are targeted for this kind of absorption into the global mass of humanity. It's to be bringing us down, not raising them, she continues. Well, viewer, I'll stop here. This article goes on even longer, and it definitely conveys the fact that this artwork style is used to promote a dehumanizing, amalgamizing type of agenda. These are one of the cursory signs of darkness of the coming beast system. It's important that we learn to recognize these works of darkness. That's all. Peace.